and there was 3 rooms.
Oh, really?
And there were sliding doors. That's why this ceiling is like it is, in case any of you were wondering. I happened to be a carpenter before I came to Krishna consciousness. And although, as I said before the Arctic, my first service was washing pots. After I moved into the temple, they really took advantage of my carpentry. In a positive way. We should never feel taken advantage of. As I was explaining before, Krishna tricked me by attracting me to the temple by using strawberry halva as his weapon. I never realized that by meditation on strawberry halva, like I was doing for so long, every time I was driving 70 miles into the temple, that the outcome would be this. So Krishna is simply trying to attract everyone. And if anyone can do it, Krishna can do it because he's all attractive. And for those of us who have forgotten that relationship with Krishna, he very kindly manifests himself in different ways so that we can actually come in contact with him again and begin our journey back home, back to Godhead. And Krishna is so very kind that he's made himself so easily accessible for such pure unalloyed devotional service, which is actually the ultimate aim or goal or objective for every living being, is to come to that platform of pure love for the supreme, most lovable object, Krishna himself. The other day, I was in a class one morning. I was remembering a recent lecture I heard of Srila Prabhupada. He was speaking about the word Dharma. And he stated that in his translation of, purposely did not translate the word Dharma as religion. He said because according to his understanding from reviewing a dictionary definition of religion, it talked about a sort of faith. And he said that faith can change. He's used the example, I may be Hindu today, I may be Muslim tomorrow, I may be Muslim today, Hindu tomorrow, I may be Hindu, be Christian tomorrow. Faith can change. So he said that to translate Dharma as religion, it was an insufficient English equivalent for the word Dharma. He said because Dharma is something that can't change. Dharma, and he used the example which he oftentimes used, that he actually defines Dharma as that which sustains one's existence. And he gave the example that the Dharma of fire is heat and light. If you want to recognize fire as being fire, then these two qualities of fire must be present. Otherwise, it's not fire. So the Dharma of fire is heat and light. The Dharma of water is liquidity. Although we understand that water can freeze and it could become ice, still its natural state is liquidity for it to be water. So in the same way, he said, therefore, the English equivalent of using the word religion is inadequate. So in this particular verse, I think he was speaking about the verse Savai Pungsam Paro Dharmo Yato Bhaktir Hoksaje Ahaitukya Pratiyata Yatma Suprasidati. He translated that verse, the supreme occupation for all mankind is that by which one can attain to loving devotional service to the Transcendental Lord. Such devotional service must be unmotivated and uninterrupted in order to completely satisfy the self. So, Parodhamma, the Paro, the highest, the supreme, translated as the supreme occupation, which essentially means that activity of the soul. We have a particular occupation that we may be engaged in this physical body. That can also change. But supreme occupation means the activity of the soul, which Krishna goes through great deliberation and articulation in the beginning of Bhagavad Gita to emphasize to Arjuna is eternal. And therefore, the soul has an eternal activity which is temporarily covered, having accepted this temporary material body. And Krishna tells Arjuna, just as a person takes off old clothes and puts on new clothes, similarly the living entity, the eternal soul, takes off his old material body and accepts a new material body. One who is self-realized, he is never dhiras tatra namuyati. One who is a self-realized soul, he's never bewildered by such a change of dress. Because he's self-realized means he's understood his eternal dharma, his sanatan dharma, his eternal activity. So Prabhupada was explaining that which sustains one's existence is the actual understanding we have of dharma, and it cannot be changed. As faith may change, but dharma cannot be changed. So the dharma of the spirit soul is to serve. When that pure spirit soul comes in contact with a temporary physical body and accepts designations, temporary designations, Prabhupada would speak about this so much in his commentaries about what are temporary designations and what are eternal designations. He will oftentimes speak about it when quoting the verse that it is the nature of devotional service, that when one engages in devotional service to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, there are automatically two byproducts. And one of them is that one becomes one becomes Sarvopari Vinirmuktam Tat Paradvena Nirmalam Rishikena Rishikesha Sevanam Bhakti Ruchite. Prabhupada would quote this verse, Sarva Upadis, all Upadis. Upadi is designation, a temporary designation that one has accepted, having accepted a temporary physical body. He's accepted a temporary designation. Man, woman, Hindu, Christian, doctor, father, mother. These designations are connection with the body. But one of the symptoms of bhakti or devotional service is that Sarvopari Vinir Muktam, is that one becomes freed from these designations. And the other is that Krishna, who is Rishikesh, who is the master of the senses, he automatically helps to bring that person who is in contact with the body, bring his senses under control, which are very difficult to control. Arjuna explains that trying to control the mind and senses is like trying to control the wind. It's very difficult, raging wind. But nonetheless, that is a symptom of bhakti, or devotional service. And the characteristic of bhakti, or devotional service, is anya bilashita shanam jnanakam anyananatam. It's given there are two characteristics of devotional service. In fact, it was Srila Prabhupada who gave this, again, this translation of bhakti. He called it devotional service. And he actually took it from this verse, anya bilashita shanam jnanakam. Its service, as we said, is the eternal activity of the soul. But when it's rendered with an intention of pleasing Krishna, that's devotion. When it's not rendered with the intention of pleasing Krishna, when it's rendered with the intention of pleasing those temporary designations, then it cannot be actually pure or unalloyed devotional service. Unalloyed devotional service means, unalloyed means there's no mixture, no desire to satisfy the self by rendering service. Service we have to render. We have to render service because that's our dharma. We may try to withdraw ourselves socially, withdraw ourselves from all social interaction, and restrict ourselves from any form of service to friends, or service to family members, or service to society. Or we may refuse to render service to the demigods, and we may also deny the existence of God, but still we have to serve. We have to serve the dictates of this temporary physical body. We serve the dictations of the mind and senses. Our nature is to be subservient. The difficulty is that the masters of this world are very hard masters, and as much as we serve them with imperfect motives, then it simply prolongs our connection with these upadis, with these temporary designations. So, therefore we have to come to realize, by coming in contact with devotional service, then that first contact with devotional service can actually awaken within our hearts that natural proclivity which every living entity has, is to serve God. Whatever way one comes in contact with Krishna, however, whether he comes in contact with Krishna by coming in contact with Krishna's devotee, comes in contact with Krishna by hearing the glories of the Lord from the devotee of the Lord, he comes in contact of Krishna by seeing the transcendental form of the Archa Vigraha, the Murti, the deity of the Lord, who has very kindly agreed to appear in this form for our benefit, because we don't have the eyes to see him. Premanjana Charita Bhakti Valochanena Santaksadai Vihidareshi Valoki Yanti, as Lord Brahma explains in the Brahma Samhita. Only when one's eyes are anointed with the salve of love of Godhead, of love for Krishna, can one actually see Krishna. As Krishna told Arjuna, I cannot be seen standing in front of you, not by pious activities, not by austerities, not by sacrifices, not by studying scriptures. These are not methods by which you can see me. If you want to see me standing before you as I am, it's only by unalloyed devotional service can I be seen as I am. Only then can you enter into the mysteries of understanding me. And in the Bhagavatam it says, Atapiti deva padam bhuja gaya prasada lasana grihita evahi. Unless one gets a drop of mercy from the lotus feet of Krishna, he'll never be able to understand the greatness of Krishna's personality. Even if he studies the Vedas for many, many births, even if he performs sacrifices, austerities, he has to get that drop of mercy from Krishna. Because Krishna reserves the right to reveal himself as he is. As the Supreme Lord, the Supreme Personality, the Supreme Person, who is worthy of our service. He's most worthy of our service. And as we said, that service should be rendered without any motivation. I have before me, it's Srimad Bhagavatam. There are a few verses I wanted to read in this connection, and I told you I wouldn't speak for long, so forgive me if I don't elaborate in great detail. We were speaking about this last night. We had a little program in the home of one devotee. We tried to capture the essence of these verses, but they're very important verses because they help us to understand a little bit the nature of Krishna's personality. If we're going to serve somebody, then it's very difficult to serve something which is not a person. What do you do? How do you satisfy? What to speak of if our constitutional nature is to serve eternally? How are we going to be? What kind of reciprocation is there going to be there from serving something impersonal? So Prabhupada, of course, he very, we say in our prayers, Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pacharane Nivashesha Shanyavadi Pastachade Satarane. Prabhupada came to the Western world to actually preach against this impersonal conception, to destroy this impersonal conception of God, that ultimately the Supreme is a force or a light, or He is. It's one aspect of the Supreme. Vedanti tattvad vidas tattvad yajnanam advayam brahmeti paramatmeti bhagavaniti shabhyate. The learned transcendentalists who know this absolute truth, they call this non-dual substance Brahman, which is the impersonal aspect of Krishna, Paramatma, which is the localized aspect of the Lord, is the super soul within the heart, who is the witness and the sanctioner of all the activities of the living being. Brahmeti Paramatmeti Bhagavan iti shabhyate. And Bhagavan is Krishna, Swayam Bhagavan, who is a person, who has senses. Every day we bow down before the deities, Angani Yasya Sakalan Viti Manti Pasyanti Manti Kalyanti Tirnam Juganti. Lord Brahma's prayers describing how all of Krishna's senses are completely transcendental. And he doesn't have a temporary physical body, which is limited like our physical bodies. Krishna can eat with his eyes. We can't eat. If we want to eat something, we have to place it in the mouth. And Krishna can enjoy something simply by seeing it. We bring forward the food and offer to him with love and devotion. Krishna says, anyone who offers me a leaf, a flower, a fruit, and water with love and devotion, I accept. So Krishna says, I accept. What does that mean? If we offer love and devotion, does that mean, if we don't see the hand coming down, taken away from the plate, that Krishna didn't accept it? He accepts the love. He accepts both by seeing with his eyes, and he accepts also because he is very eager to accept something from the hands of his devotee who offers it with love, with the intention, I want to give this to Krishna. There's no other motive. As we said, there's two characteristics, Anya Balasha Srinugana Kananya Bhavatam. First is with the intention to please Krishna. That is the first characteristic of bhakti. And then the second is that there's no motive. It's freed from fruit of desire for either some material gain or for liberation, with the desire to become free from suffering, which is also a selfish desire. Krishna Bhakta Nishkama Ataiva Shanti Bhukti Mukti Siddhi Kami Sakali Ashanti. This verse is in Chaitanya Charita. Krishna Bhakta, Bhakti, the devotee of Lord Krishna, he's Nishkama. Nishkama means that he's desireless. He has no material desires. Krishna Bhakta Nishkama Ataiva Shanta. Therefore, Shanta, he can be peaceful. He can be fully satisfied. All his desires are fulfilled by Krishna. That's why he's satisfied. That's why he's desireless. He has nothing else to hanker for. He's achieved everything. Krishna has given himself to that person who has bhakti. Therefore, the devotee can be genuinely peaceful. His senses can be controlled. Because Krishna, who is Govinda, the one who gives pleasure to the senses, we're meant to experience pleasure with spiritual senses. Krishna told Arjuna, with spiritual eyes you can see me. No, these physical eyes. I give you the eyes by which you can see me. So, with spiritual eyes we can see, we can relish the beauty of Krishna. So Krishna Bhakta Nishkama, Nishkama means desireless. He has no material desires, and therefore he could be peaceful. Bhukti, Mukti, Siddhi, Kami. Those who desire bhukti, sense enjoyment, those who desire mukti, liberation, those who desire siddhis, mystic yoga perfections, kami. Kami means lust. They still have lusty desires. Sakali ashanta. Therefore, they can never be peaceful. They cannot be peaceful because they still have unfulfilled desire. Even liberation. Even liberation. Lord Brahma describes Yenyad Ravadaksha Vamukti Maninas Tvayasta Bhavada Vashuddha Bhuyaya Aruya Krishna Parambadam Tata Padantito Nazman Yuzmadangaya. Lord Brahma describes in the prayers of the Srimad Bhagavatam, non-devotees be engaged in severe austerities and penances to achieve the highest position, but they fall down from that position of imagined superiority because they fail to take shelter in Krishna's lotus feet. They fall from that position. Their liberation is called Vimukta Maninas, which means they think they're liberated. It's liberation in the mind. They think, yes, I'm free. I'm liberated. But unless one actually comes to realize his constitutional nature as a particle at the lotus feet of Krishna, a servant of Krishna, always with the purpose of satisfying the senses, satisfying the desires of the Supreme Lord, then one will even fall down from that position of impersonal liberation. It's not a permanent position. Real liberation is devotional service to Krishna. Therefore, bhukti, mukti, siddhikami, sakali ashanta. The muktis and the siddhis, bhuktis, they cannot find lasting happiness, peace. Rupa Goswami quotes from Bhukti Mukti Spiha Yava Pisachi Hirivartate. Rupa Goswami, he is one of our acharyas, one of the foremost disciples of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, who was instructed by Lord Chaitanya himself. He quotes this verse, Bhukti Mukti Spiha Yavat, that Bhukti and Mukti, they're compared to be like two witches which haunt one like a ghost. As long as one is haunted by these two witches of Bhukti, the desire to enjoy to the fruitive activities to the extreme and desire for liberation, one will never be able to taste the bliss of devotional service to Krishna. So therefore we quoted in the beginning that verse, Savai Pungsam Paro Damo Yato Bhaktir Dhoksaje Ahaitukya Patihata Yayatma Supasidati. The supreme Dharma for all living beings is that by which man can render loving devotional service to the Transcendental Lord. Of course, and then the next part is such service must be rendered without any motivation and without any interruption in order for the self to be completely satisfied. So then when we think, well, why are you telling us that? If you're telling us that, well, if this is how I'm going to get self-satisfaction, then it seems like I have a selfish motive. If I have to render unmotivated, uninterrupted service in order to satisfy myself, you're giving me some selfish motivation to do that by telling me that's how I'm going to be self-satisfied. But actually, the desire to please the Lord is selfless. And not only that, but Prabhupada would oftentimes quote that verse, Akama Savakama Moksha Kama Udardi Tivena Bhakti Yogena Yajita Purushapuram. Whether one has desires, whether one has no desires, whether one is desiring liberation, a person with broader intelligence must somehow, by some means, serve Krishna. If he comes in contact with Krishna, somehow comes in contact with Krishna through service, then even if he has some selfish desire in his heart, it will be cleared from the heart. The Lord will act in such a way to eradicate all the desires, separate, independent desires that are obstructing us from the path of pure unalloyed devotional service, He'll eradicate them from within the heart. Srinvata svakata Krishna punya shavana kirtana hridantisto hyabudani virunoti suhrit sutam. Suhrit, friend. So Shri Krishna, who is the super soul in the heart of all living beings, He cleanses desire for material enjoyment from within the heart of that person who develops the urge to hear His messages, which are in themselves virtuous when properly heard and chanted. Krishna will do that. He'll help that person to come to Him, even if he has some motive. We've been saying how personal service to the Supreme Lord has to be rendered without motivation. But any contact with devotional service, even for a moment, can actually bring that fruit. And therefore, we were explaining this the other day, that's why Srila Narada Muni instructed Vyasadeva, after Vyasadeva had compiled the Vedanta Sutra, the Mahabharatas, he had compiled the 4 Vedas and entrusted them to their respective personalities. He has compiled all of these things, but he was still feeling somehow dissatisfied. And his spiritual master appeared before him and told him that because you failed to glorify the pastimes of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, you're going to confuse people in the age of Kali. They'll think something which is upadharma to be real dharma. Give them the pastimes of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Describe the pastimes, the qualities, and the name and form, transcendental form of the Lord, and the pure unalloyed devotees of the Lord, who are always with the Lord, rendering service to the Lord. Describe those pure unalloyed pastimes, and then people will not be confused. They'll understand what is the Paro Dharma, what is the highest Dharma. They'll take to devotional service. And he told Vyasadeva, he says, even if a person gives up his occupational activities to engage in a devotional service of the Lord, he may fall down in an immature stage, but there's never any danger of his being unsuccessful. On the other hand, a non-devotee, even if he perfectly engages in his occupational activities, can never be successful. And in the next verse he says, my dear Vyas, even though a devotee of Krishna may sometimes fall down somewhere or other, he'll certainly not become a fruitive worker again, because anyone who has once, for a moment, tasted the lotus nectar of the lotus feet of Krishna will never be able to forget that ecstasy. Never be able. But try. But anyone who's once even relished, even for a moment. Therefore, the Bhagavatam also states in the 2nd canto that what is the value of a prolonged life which is wasted inexperienced by years in this world? Better one moment of full consciousness, because that will enable one to search after his ultimate interest. Right? This is Sukadeva Goswami explained, what is the value of him living a long life? Trees, they live a long life. He said, but Chaitanya, Lord Prabhupada says in the commentary, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was only on this planet for 48 years. But look what he did. So, in 48 years. So, what is the value of just having a long life, which is wasted, inexperienced by years of this world? Everyone's trying to prolong their life as long as possible, live. But is it really valuable to prolong the life if one has gotten that one moment of full consciousness, which is what this life and this body is really all about? It's a vehicle. It's a vehicle meant to carry us across the ocean of material existence. And if for one moment we get that full consciousness, yes, I'm Krishna's servant. Krishna is the Supreme Lord. Even that one moment's full consciousness will impel us to search after our ultimate interest, which is devotional service to Krishna. So there's no failure. The point is, there's no failure in bhakti. One can never fail. Krishna says, in this endeavor there's never any loss or diminution, and a little advancement on this path protects one from the most dangerous type of fear. There's no failure. Anyone who begins devotional service, even for a moment, That is the beauty of bhakti, because it's our innate, natural characteristic of the soul is to please someone. And if we somehow, by good fortune, bhagyavan, by good fortune, have received the opportunity to come in contact with Krishna and to offer some service, like I told before the arti, like I said, my first thing this devotee said to me, it wasn't profound philosophy. He didn't preach to me. I was telling the story about when I was washing pots, for those of you who came late. I was explaining that previously I had to wash so many pots in the place where I was living, and I always had to do it begrudgingly, because I was very frustrated by my housemates who would never clean up after themselves, and I wanted to cook something and offer it to Krishna. So I always had to clean everything first before I could make something. It would take me an hour at least, sometimes even longer. So my first visit to the temple, I came and spoke to a devotee, and the devotee said, "Would you like to do some devotional service?" I said, "Sure." And he brought me in the back room and showed me a mountain of pots. And initially I was very resistant to the idea. I'm doing all the time pots. That's all I spend, I had to eat every day, and every day I had to wash everybody else's pots and dishes in the whole house. And there were about 12 or 15 of us living in the house at the time. I guess that's how it was back in the 70s. Nobody washed dishes. It's like everything went out. As long as there was something clean on the shelf, nothing would ever get washed. So anyways, I went and saw that mountain of pots, and I started to think, I do pots all the time. And then that devotee just came and said one line, "When you clean Krishna's pots, you clean your heart." That's it. I made the connection. These are not ordinary pots. One moment. And what to think of, or what to speak of, Devotional service is supposed to be a haituki, a pratihata. All right, one moment doing it for Krishna, but it's supposed to be uninterrupted. And that's usually the duality that most people confront constantly. I'm interrupted. I've got this I have to do, I've got that I have to do. When I think about all the interruptions I have, I'm grateful if I can get that one moment. And it's supposed to be uninterrupted. But still do not fear. Krishna is kind. Even that one moment of contact with devotional service actually enables us to begin on the path of unmotivated, uninterrupted devotional service. Of course, one has to develop a desire or cultivate the desire to make progress in spiritual life, to become freed from the obstacles on the path of devotional service. And for that we need the association of devotees. We need the mercy of Krishna in the form of His holy name, chanting Krishna's name helplessly in a dependent mood, with absorption, with a desire to please the Lord and to satisfy the Lord. Even calling out, even for a moment in this way, even for a moment. What is it in the Ramayana? It states for anyone who, even for a moment, from that moment on, he says to the Lord, "From this day I am yours." I will accept that person. From this day on, I am yours. So if we somehow cultivate that internal attitude of giving not just our body, but giving our mind and giving our hearts, because that's what devotion is. It means with our heart, the desire to please. Then Krishna will take notice of that service and will help us. Ananyas chintaya tomam yejana payopashate tesham nitya viyuktanam yogakshema vihamyaham. Anyone who meditates upon in my personal form in this way is always trying to please me. For them, whatever they lack, I will carry. Whatever they have, I will preserve. And I'll carry whatever they lack. And Krishna is ready to do that. Prabhupada would translate that verse as, you take one step to Krishna, Krishna takes 100 steps to you. That was his explanation of that verse. We have to take the step. We have our choice. We have our tiny independence. And Krishna is somehow trying to attract us to make a series of right choices. Krishna is not going to force us. He's going to try to attract us, and we make a series of right choices. And then He will help us. Whatever we lack, He will give us. He'll compensate for whatever we may lack. And whatever little desire we have, He will fan it and increase it. So it will burn up all. Kechit kevalaya bhaktya vasudeva parayana agamdun vantnikartniha niham eva bhaskara. A person who has achieved unalloyed devotional service, he can uproot the weeds of sinful desires without any possibility of them ever reviving. He can do this simply by discharging devotional service, just as the sun dissipates the fog by its rays. We know that, in the early morning hours, I'm sure many of you have experienced trying to fly into Delhi or flying to Calcutta, and in the wrong time of the year, flights either diverted someplace because of the fog. I know it's happened to me many times. I remember flying from Bombay to Calcutta and finding myself in Bangkok. Waiting. What are we waiting for? The fog. And then as the sun appears in the sky, and gradually the fog is dissipated by the rays of the sun. Okay, everybody board the plane, now we're going to Calcutta. So as soon as the sun appears in the sky, gradually it will dissipate the fog. So similarly, as soon as one engages in devotional service, then it will gradually uproot these weeds of sinful desires without any possibility of arising again. Prabhupada would oftentimes give the example, just like if you take seeds, or if you look at soil and look at grass and you turn it over, everything, and all you see is barren soil. Right? But it may look barren, but the seeds have simply been turned under. So we may externally renounce certain things, called Palgu Vairagya. Palgu Vairagya means false renunciation. Prabhupada used this term, he says it's in reference to the Palgu river. He said there is a river that it doesn't flow on the surface, it flows below the surface. He said, but you cannot see it. He said, but if you go to that place where the Palgu river is flowing, and you put your hand down in the sand, you feel that the water is flowing there. He says, similarly, there may be many Palgu Vairagis, false renunciants, artificial renunciants, who try to give up this world, disconnect themselves, renounce this world without understanding its connection with Krishna. He said, but although they may falsely renounce, he says, if you put your hand in their hearts, you'll see that so many desires are flowing. They're called Palgu Vairagis. Right? So, therefore, Vasudeve Bhagavati Bhakti Yoga Prayojata Janaya Yashu Vairagyam Janam Haiktukam. By rendering devotional service to the Supreme Personality of God, that one automatically acquires knowledge and detachment. That is the beauty of devotional service. I didn't get to these verses of Bhagavatam. I did want to read them, but I think I've taken enough of your time. Thank you for your kind attention, for your patience. And now, I don't know if it's strawberry halva, but it's Krishna Prasad. Thank you, Hare Krishna.